Blog Talk Radio.
Welcome, living beneficiaries, to the show for living beneficiaries, the House of Hidalgo show on the Estate Radio Network. Prepare for the most educational 60 minutes on all of radio with your host, Rick Hidalgo. The House of Hidalgo show can be followed on Twitter or Facebook by searching House of Hidalgo. Find the show on the web at www.therockofsalem.org. Sign up for the newsletter, and while you're there, take the 5-question survey to let us know what you think. The Estate Radio Network is part of the Blog Talk Radio family of networks and can be found at www.blogtalkradio.com/South Dakota DP. Join the show now by chat or call 619-639-4605. Don't forget to dial 1 to get in the queue. Here's your host, Rick Hidalgo! Hello, living beneficiaries. This is Rick Hidalgo, of course, the host of the House of Hidalgo show here in Salem, South Dakota. We are broadcasting live on the Estate Radio Network, which can be found at www.theestateradionetwork.com. I got some things to cover today. I am supposed to have a special guest named Sam Coffman. Sam is not, he's not come on so far. I'm going to continue to try to get him on the call via every possible connection, every possible way that I can. However, I've not been able to reach him either by email or by Skype. This is the kind of thing that tends to happen sometimes with new guests. We get some confusion. I'm going to try to get Sam Coffman on the line. Let's see how that works. That's going to be interesting. For some reason, my call ended with Skype. I'm not sure how I can get this done. Please bear with me a second. I'm going to throw a commercial on and be right back. Do you need an experienced editor to look over your short story, script, or novel? Do you need help building a platform or self-publishing your book? Are you on the cusp of realizing your dream, but you need someone to help you with those few extra steps? Are you a business in need of an established copy editor or copywriter? Dan O'Brien has more than a decade of experience in writing and publishing, and his rates are flexible. All that matters to Dan is the integrity of your artistic vision, and Dan can help you create the highest quality work possible. Please email Dan today at amalgamconsulting@gmail.com or visit his website, www.amalgamconsulting.com. That's AMALGAM consulting.com. Write Dan today. Start your dreams tomorrow. Do you have hopes, dreams, and goals, but don't know how to reach them? Do you wonder how you could do differently to achieve greater success at home or at work? Do you feel like something is holding you back from enjoying your life to the fullest? Are you fed up with status quo and ready for real and lasting life change? Are you wanting to start a business or expand an existing one? If the answer to any of these questions is yes, then you are ready for life coaching with Mr. Attitude. Mr. Attitude will stretch and grow you and take your life to a whole new level of success by equipping you with the tools to help you to accomplish more in less time, get and keep your priorities in line, gain greater happiness and joy, face your fears, plan for success, be more assertive and confident, overcome negative stress, deal with negative thinking, set goals you will achieve, and more. Mr. Attitude specializes in results producing. Life strategy coaching for the personal side of your life, small business coaching for those who want to start a small business or build a stronger small business, train the trainer coaching for those who aspire to become a motivational professional speaker. Call today and reserve your appointment with greater success. 605-450-1955. That's 605-450-1955. Or email Bob at MrAttitudespeaks.com. That's MrAttitudespeaks.com. Mr. Attitude is committed to your success. Alrighty, we're back here on the House of Hidalgo show with Rick Hidalgo. I do have Sam Coffman on the line with me. Are you with me, Sam?
I sure am. Hi, Rick.
Wonderful, wonderful. Sorry about the confusion, but for some reason my Skype went down and I can't dial in with Skype. So it's so I'm on my cell phone and I added you to the call that way. But it's all the same. With that behind us, I've already run our ad spots to kind of buy me a little bit of time. So I decided, maybe we should just start, Sam, by giving a little background on how you got started in preparedness, or what.
Sure,
that.
Absolutely. Most of your show is mostly focused on preparedness, and I believe, is that correct?
Yes, preparedness, and we got a lot of patriots that listen that are concerned about our society. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, and so my as you mentioned on my background, I have a military background, or as I saw on the site that you put up, I have a military background, and I was into a lot of the things that I'm into long before I got into the military, and I grew up in a family where we spent a lot of time outdoors. We did a lot of gardening. We pretty much harvested our own food every summer. We picked, we had apple trees and pear trees and gardens, and my mom canned, very, very, whatever the word is, a lot in the fall, and we would have, just stores and stores of food there that we had in our cellar, in our basement. We had kind of a root cellar basement, and as well, and we would just kind of grew up that way. A lot of gardening, a lot of that kind of thing. So I never thought about it, and they never really were into prepping per se the way it is today. But they both went through. Both my mom and dad, of course, were children and teenagers during the Depression, the Great Depression, and my dad grew up on a ranch, a wheat ranch, and so it was kind of they've been through hard times. They've been through having to slaughter. Even my dad, when he was a kid, he was very much a horseman, really loved horses, and he had a pet horse, and that was their food for that. Had to be the food for the winter one year. They had no choice. That was what they had to do, and so that's tough, for a kid to have to do something like that. So I kind of grew up in that environment, and being in the military, of course, being prepared was more of a military thing, but in being in special forces, it's just, you're kind of your own unit unto yourself wherever you are, and you have to be able to fend for yourself wherever you are without any kind of outside support a lot of times. And so that was just always kind of the mentality. And really, just through my school, honestly, I'd have to say, since we started the school, and I've been doing this for over 25 years, teaching survival. But my school here, the Human Path, is really only about 5 years old, maybe almost 6 years old here in Texas. And so I think once we started here in Texas really was where we really started to just be mostly concerned. I've always been concerned about where the world's going, honestly, and felt like something's going to happen. When I was honestly, when I went into Special Forces, which was 25 years ago, or so, 1989, so I guess not quite. But I remember even then that there were other people, and we would all say, why are you here? Well, I'm here because I just feel like something's going to happen. It's inevitable, and I really wanted to know. So in that sense, I guess my prepping kind of started at that point in my life, which I was about 27 or 28 years old, and then it's just kind of grown since then.
Right. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your school? What is it that you're doing there at your school?
Sure. Well, I think the best way, when when somebody says, well, what's your school about? And I say, well, it's a survival school. That's kind of a real short way of saying what we really do. We have so many things we do. The spectrum of things that we train and we learn at my school are it's a very broad spectrum. In other words, there's a lot of different things we do, but it's not scattered about, in a random fashion. it's very organized the way that you would say a university or college is organized. We have core paths. They're called paths or specialties you could think of. And there's four main specialties, and those four specialties are combat medic, hunter-gatherer, primitive engineer, and scout. And each of those paths has both an urban component and a wilderness or primitive component. And so those are the core classes and the core specialties. And then within those or around those, we have an entire spectrum of dozens and dozens of different types of elective classes, which we consider peripheral classes or electives in a college. And those range from everything from plant medicine or herbology, a whole series of that. And these are open anyway. You don't have to come into a core specialty to take these electives. But herbology is an example of that. Blacksmithing and knife making is an example. Tracking and naturalist studies. A whole range of primitive skills, from primitive bow making to, survival bow making to actual stave and primitive bow making, lumber bow making, arrow making, those kinds of things, that ladle. So primitive hunting and fishing, kind of a whole series of that. We have an entire series that's related around our primitive engineer, which includes things like ham radio and making your, antenna theory and understanding how to make antennas out of different types of materials of salvage, learning how to make water purification out of salvage, like slow sand filtration, that really works, not just, it has to work. So we've got that whole spectrum of all those kinds of classes, and then basically what I would say is we focus our classes around a couple things. One of them is community. We're very, very big on community. So everybody that comes and goes to our class, goes to any of our classes, especially our core classes, is really kind of part of a family, part of a community. And we don't make it. It's not like we try to force that matter, but we really open it up and allow and do a lot of things that are, like we'll have canning workshops or just weekends where people just show up with their food they want to can. We have barter and trade events once a month where people show up, no cash allowed, and it's only stuff that you've either made or is related to prepping. So people are showing up with their own canned goods, that they've canned or harvested themselves or grown themselves. Bread, they've actually ground the wheat, they ground the grain themselves and made the bread. I do a lot of medicinal tinctures. Usually they're down there. Meats, and we get like 70 people showing up for that. So the last one, it keeps growing. So we get a lot of that. So the point is, very community-based. That's one of the differences, I think, between us and most other survival schools. And the other one, I would say, is that we are very much focused on doing something with what we've learned. So it's not just, you don't just come to our school and learn a few skills and then go home and put them on a shelf and it's done. Right, and that's what I think a lot of people make a mistake of, not understanding that learning the skill is much different than actually practicing and then having to use the skill. So what we do is we teach the skill first in the classroom, and then we really do a lot of hands-on, and then we put it into scenario. And we're really scenario heavy. I have role players, some that are paid role players, some that are part of other classes that are students, more advanced. And then once we've done things in role play, in scenarios where we have like end of the world type of, types of scenarios where something's really happened or we have a major breakdown, societal collapse. Right. And people really want to hurt you, right? Or they really want to take what you've got, or they really want to help you. You don't know. You have to learn all these things and apply what we've done with those four specialties I talked about. So the scout, for instance, is the eyes and the ears of the class, of the group, of the team, and they have to be able to go and get information and find out and reconnaissance and learning how to move through the woods quietly, or learning how to social engineer and to get information from people and find out information without giving yourself away, and then bringing that back and then making decisions. So all of these four specialties are really the four specialties that could be used to rebuild community very easily, because they're functional core specialties really that could do anything. They can be self-sustainable in any kind of an environment. So that's the whole scenario side of things. And then finally, the last thing we do with it is we take it, and we have a nonprofit called Herbal Medics. So we take all these skills and we take these people that have these skills and we take it into remote parts of Nicaragua. We take it into places in Costa Rica. We take it into, if we can, we take it into urban areas that are underserved, urban areas in the United States, where we would like to spread out even into Indian reservations in the United States. And we actually take these teams that are combined to these specialties, and we do things like herbal medical clinics. So we have a student medical herbal clinic that we're treating, or we're not treating, but we're working with people specifically with plant medicine. We are teaching sustainable self-sustainability. If we've got, for instance, in Nicaragua, many of the illnesses are basically waterborne problems. So we actually go down and our engineers set up slow sand filtration, for instance, and it works really, really well. It has to. I mean, it's not just a class and making it out of a 5-gallon bucket. It's doing it in the right way to serve an entire community or a clinic or whatever we do it for.
Wow.
And maybe we make a pump, like a hand pump, rope pumps, or we make put together commo for a CV commo, let's say, for a couple of different villages, or maybe we put together ways to sanitation, basic sanitation. So the engineers are doing things like that. Our primitive engineers off-grid, 12-volt power storage, bicycle-driven power storage, windmill, whatever they may be doing. And then we have sustainable food growing and agriculture, and that's our hunter-gatherers on the urban side. So a lot of it a lot of the problems are nutritional based, for instance, in some of these places. So teaching them how to grow their own food, and their soil's not any good, they don't know how to compost, so raised bed gardening becomes actually important. And doing that in urban areas too, with community garden type stuff. So really pulling that all together, it's into the nonprofit, and what Herbal Medics does, it's really affecting not just health, but long-term sustainability and the culture of the way we live, bringing people a little bit closer to the food we eat, right? Instead of just thinking that all your food grows in the styrofoam box from McDonald's, but really understanding where it comes from, and really understanding where your health comes from. How we have health all around us, and really plant medicine is food. It's just a different degree of food, anywhere from power food to poison. Somewhere in that spectrum is where most medicine lies, and it works. And it's, of course, as we know, and as pharmaceutical companies know, it works very well. Over 60% of our medicines come from about 40 plants. So
right.
This is all really more of a way of life than it is just learning a few skills.
Well, that's amazing. And excuse me, that sounds very all-encompassing. It doesn't sound like a class. It sounds more like a lifestyle.
Yes, it is. It really is a lifestyle.
Yeah. That's great stuff. I mean, you prowl the internet, you do a little bit of surfing, and you see all these things about, people putting together these things they call bug out kits, and, they got, there's survival everything on the internet, but it sounds like you've taken that to the extreme where you're not just offering the what, but the how-to, and you've taken it all the way to the extreme.
Right. I mean, what good does any of that information do if you can't use it, right?
Right.
I mean, it's just, so it has to become a part of your life, and it really does when you start getting into prepping, I think, the right way. For instance, I'm sitting here talking to you on the phone, and you can probably hear in the background water running. That's my tilapia. We've got a jacuzzi with the tilapia, aquaponics setup, and I'm having to get some ice out of the freezer to take out to our rabbits because, it's so hot here in Texas. We got ice, put some ice out every day, pretty much for them, and so we rotate ice out there just once a day usually. But so we grow our own rabbits, we have our own chickens and ducks, and in kind of a semi-urban. I'd say. I mean, we live on a couple acres, and we're outside of town, but we're still fairly urban in that regard. We're not way out in the middle of nowhere, remote or anything. So this is where also I think is really important. What a lot of places fail to do, a lot of schools and a lot of communities and a lot of the online stuff fails to realize is that it really has to be a community issue. It's not. Nobody's going to survive on their own if there's a real collapse. There's no way. It's not Hollywood. Things. You're just going to be all you're going to be if you're by yourself. No matter how skilled you are and how much stuff you have, all you're going to become is you're just going to be supplies for somebody else because they're going to take it from you. Some group of people that actually is working as a group is going to take it from you. You can't stay awake 24 hours a day. And you can't and do all the other stuff it takes. So it's really a community effort.
Isn't that what Hollywood convinced us was possible? Is movies like Rambo?
Yeah, right. And right, the lone survivor that walks all the way across, Nevada, and you never see him even so much with the canteen hardly, and all this stuff is just totally, complete suspension of any kind of real reality. And so what our school is all about is, what does it really take? I get a lot of preppers that come in that say they say, well, I'm good. I've grown all my own. I've got all the hybrid seeds. I'm sorry, all the heirloom seeds in storage. I've got enough to last me for 5 or 6 years worth of seeds. I'm going to be fine. And I say, well, how much gardening have you done? Well, I haven't really grown much. It's like, well, do you understand that you got to grow food for about 5 years, really, till you understand and you've dealt with drought, dealt with insects. I mean, we've been growing food for, over a decade, and we could if we really had to, but right now, even in good seasons, we're still barely at maybe 25% of our produce is all of our eating is maybe supplied, our garden supply maybe 25%. It's hard to get to that point. Now with our meat production, it's different. We could live off our meat production. That's fast, but growing food and vegetables is hard to do.
Right. Now you mentioned just a moment ago aquaponics, and sounds like you do a lot of permaculture up around there. These are things that people are just now starting to kind of walk into, things that, and a lot of my listeners that are kind of tired of the urban life and they're trying to get back to the land. These are some of the things that they're really into. I wonder, could you give us kind of paint us a broad picture of what a permaculture structure would look like there in your part of the world? Where are you exactly?
Well, I'm in Texas. I'm in Central Texas,
okay.
Which is, I'm north of San Antonio and not too far from Austin. Really, our school's about north of San Antonio, a little ways, maybe 70 minutes west of Austin. And it's hot, and the biggest problem you have to deal with is the heat and the drought. So I'd say, if you're looking for a place to establish a homestead, or you're interested in that. I mean, first of all,
right,
a lot of our classes are geared towards this too. Is you need to take yourself away from the grid step by step. Don't expect to do it all at once. Just do, and that's what our classes are all about, a blueprint to get people to, it's independent, a step at a time. But that's what you got to do, is a step at a time. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, if you're looking to actually move somewhere and start your own homestead, I think the most important thing you should consider is really water. How much water is available to you in the ground there. So I think that's going to be our biggest problem with climate change and the growing drought through our country. It's just we've got some really serious water issues in huge parts of the country now, and that's just going to get worse. So that's something to really consider from a standpoint of permaculture first, I think. And the second thing is soil health. You have to understand soil health, and you have to, if you want to really be any good at growing, the first thing you do is just start composting. Just get a little, even if you've never done it before in your life, a good way to do it is just to get a little bucket and put it under your sink and throw your scraps in there and get some worms, and just vermiculture, and start with that, and start with growing some plants even in your windowsill. You don't have to take them outside and start a big garden or anything like that. Just start them in your windowsill, and the same things that you learn, in your kitchen, growing a plant in a pot, that's still information that you can use. You'll understand what a plant looks like when it's not getting enough water, obviously, and when there's maybe too much, there's too much, it's not used to the particular pH of the soil very well. It doesn't grow. If you want blueberries, you're going to have acidity in your soil, and you're going to have acidity in your water. I can't grow blueberries here just because our water out of the tap is about 7.8, 7.9 pH. It doesn't matter where, if they're in a pot or not. And the composting is absolutely crucial. You've got to compost your own stuff at your own food, waste, your food waste, and then there's a lot of different aspects of that. For instance, you can get into black soldier fly larvae, which I'm really into, because that way we can compost meat waste, we can even compost dog poop. You can probably compost human poop, that way with black soldier fly larvae, and you end up with a sterile compost out of it. So there's that insect still level in between your plants and the human that you have to start being aware of and understanding how that fits in. And also mainly because we just don't have any soil health left. We've destroyed our soil health. We probably haven't had much soil health in this country since the 50s. We've destroyed it with pesticides and with herbicides and with, toxic agricultural stuff that we've put into it to make it grow faster, and then we basically just deplete the soil of all of its natural micronutrients that are necessary to be able to grow. So with permaculture, when you get into that, you start realizing, even like things like tilling up your soil every year really isn't what you want to do, and learning how to plant cover crops and learning how to, mulch kill stuff so that you end up with a really nice top bed that you try not to walk on, and that you've really got a nice topsoil layer that builds up, real thick humus and mulch and the stuff that you need to be able to have a constant life cycle that goes from surface down deep and then back up again. This entire cycle, and then you plant your different plants that help you do that. But it's not difficult to do. It's not rocket science, and you can start real simply, like I said, with just composting your own kitchen waste, and even with just a little bit of worms in a bucket, or starting your own compost pile somewhere, and then just start small. Just start with a little garden, outside your home. It doesn't take. A lot of people think you got to move into a homestead that's got 100 acres on it. You can't possibly work 100 acres. You can't even work 1 acre of real garden. I mean, you got the what are they? I forget their names. I think it's the DeVries or the DeVries family. Is it? That's their name out in L.A. They grow something like $300,000 worth of food off of like a little city lot in L.A. Vertical gardening.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, you can do anything. You can do a lot of gardening in a very small amount of space with if you're just a little bit creative about it.
Right. Yeah. Gen 4. Yeah. This is really good stuff. Now I know what we really wanted to get into here was the herbology, because you mentioned to me when we had a discussion that you had a national class that was online, and we wanted to chat about that a little bit so that our national audience will have an opportunity to jump into what you're doing, because it sounds like you're really, really, really well-rounded, and you got a little bit of everything to offer to anybody who comes along. So that's good stuff.
Yeah, well, we really strive for that, and I've got about 15 instructors in my school, and I'm really hard on them. I mean, not hard in the bad sense, just I expect a lot out of my instructors. I expect them to really know and be passionate about their subjects, and they all are. So, I mean, we've gone through some, we've taken a while to get to the point we're at, but we have some really amazing instructors for all these areas. I couldn't possibly teach all of the things we teach to the depth we do now. I used to teach it all. I taught it all, but I didn't teach to any of the depth that we're teaching it now, and there's no way a person could humanly do that. So now, yes, you're right. We're very broad in terms of all the things we know, but we also have a lot of depth. And then I say my area of expertise in this is the herbal medicine or plant medicine or herbology, herbalism, whatever you want to call it. And that is, I think, is the cornerstone of the whole combat medic specialty for us, and why we do our, all the field work we do with herbal medicine out in the remote areas and in post-disaster situations even. And so I got really, I started getting into herbal medicine when I was in the military, when I was a Special Forces medic, and it started a couple different ways. One, the main way was I realized looking around, as I mentioned earlier, as a Special Forces team, you're really, you have to be self-sustainable too. You pretty much can't count on necessarily getting support outside. So I'd look around and think, well, this is great. I've got all the pharmaceuticals, because as an SF medic, you're almost like a doctor in a way. I mean, you're given, you have pharmaceuticals with you that are prescription-type pharmaceuticals. And I say, okay, we have all this stuff that I've got with me on my back, and maybe what we might be able to get dropped in if we're lucky. But what if we run out of all of that? And so that's where I first started really looking into the plant world. And I grew up in a family that was very plant-conscious, and with a mother that was a very good gardener, but I never really thought about plant medicine seriously until I was in SF and Special Forces. And so it just kind of went from there. It just pretty much spiraled spiraled up. I never really looked back. It just kept going. And as I started to see some of the amazing things I was able to do with plant medicine, even on myself, some very serious trauma that I've healed on my own body, and of course family and loved ones. Then it started to go from there, and now I'm a clinical herbalist, and I work with an MD sometimes, a functional medicine doctor, family doctor, and I work with a lot of clients now, and of course we teach and have our student clinic and do all of that, and then of course with our clinics across the border and in underserved areas. I realized that there's really very little that you can't do with herbal medicine. And my focus and niche has been, how do you teach that and take all the fluff out and teach it in a way that a person can, with a minimum amount of time, be up and running to be able to work with herbs for their own family, you know. And that's really what a prepper needs, I think, more than anything. It's, you know, and really that's what everybody needs. We need to take medicine back to the people. That's, you know, I'm kind of really big on that. I think that's herbal medicine is the original medicine of the people, and it always will be.
Right.
And
wasn't it the Hippocratic Oath that said the effect that let your medicine be your food and your food be your medicine? Exactly.
A lot of people don't know this, but a lot of our concept of energetic medicine, like you find in Chinese medicine, that started. We have a Western version of that too. It's called the Galenic medicine. It's the humor, the humors, and we call it traditional Greek medicine, or TGM. So I mean, that whole concept of understanding plants as biomaterial, not just chemicals, but actual living creatures, living, you know, conscious entities, really, that we practice mouth-to-mouth resuscitation with via the carbon cycle every breath we take. That's a really important step to take and understand, too. And so I teach my whole concept of my online herbology course, you know, that is called the Herbal Medic Level 1, is to be able to give somebody in about 100 hours, equivalent of about 100 class hours, to get them very confident to be able to work with herbs, for their own family and for themselves, or even for a neighborhood clinic, let's say, if we had a complete breakdown.
Mm-hmm. That's great. So I suppose the first thing you kind of take them through is being able to recognize what's an herb and what's not.
Well, honestly, all plants are medicine. You know, there's probably not a single plant that's not in some way or another doesn't have some sort of a medicinal effect. Now, some have poisonous effect with any amount that we might consider normal. You know, like if you took a mouthful of and chewed a mouthful of sacred datura or foxglove or, you know, poison hemlock or water hemlock, then yeah, it would be poison. But in very, very small doses, all of those are actually medicine as well. So a lot of people, you know, it's just more a matter of the amount, really, a lot of times, than it is the actual plant. And so that's part of it. You know, of course, we need to learn what those plants are. We're not working with plants. We don't want to work with plants that are on that upper scale towards the poison to begin with, of course. You know, so we learn the plants that I like to work with the plants that are maybe halfway up that scale to where you're going to be fine. There's no way you're going to possibly overdose or have a problem with any amount that you could probably take of what you make, but it's not a plant maybe that you would want to take for a long period of time. You know, you might build up a liver toxicity if you took a certain medicinal plant, let's say, for a month straight. You know, then that's something to watch. So there's a lot of things to learn, contraindications. I have a book out. It's called The Herbal Medic Field Guide, and it's more focused on Southwest and Central Texas plants, but it's still the concept. There's a lot of plants that grow everywhere in the lower 48 as well. And so I've got that, and I'm working on a full book called The Herbal Medic, which is really my niche in medicine, in herbal medicine, which is all the things that you would normally go to an ER for, non-surgically, that you'd go to an ER for. Can you take care of those? Because that's the stuff, the acute trauma and the acute illness, that just having that herbal knowledge will get you through some really serious problems. And you think about post-disaster medicine, you know, you're talking about a lot of infection. You know, let's say there's a hurricane, everything's covered in sewage and salt water, you know. So you think about it. You go out there and everything's broken. There's broken glass and there's twisted metal everywhere. And you you step on something with that cuts through your pants or whatever, and you slice your leg. You know, you're not just slicing your leg with a clean piece of metal. It's probably literally the equivalent of a punji steak, you know, that's got sewage smeared on it. Right. So those kinds of situations, you know, what are the plants? What plants can you treat something like that kind of an infection with? And you can. The good news is you can. You can work with those kinds of things in the field. It's not the same as pumping your body full of antibiotics and moving on and forgetting about it. You really have to treat it's not an herb for a pharmaceutical. It doesn't work that way, but you can do those things if you have a little bit of training. So that's what I focus on. So, you know, if you go to my site, thehealingpath.com, you should see on the front page, I think we have still, you know, a link to my online herbology course, or if you go into to the navigation bar and stuff, you'll find my online herbology course and see that. And it's a lot of video, some audio, and a lot of, I've got some webinars, and I've got a lot of just personal interaction with some homework and stuff that you got to do, and so that way I can personally interact with students. And then we're actually putting together what I call kind of a bridge class for people who've taken the online course. They can come out to our school for one weekend, and we just do nothing but all the hands-on things that are really difficult to kind of do in an online course, but we get those out of the way in about a weekend.
Wow, that's fabulous. That's good stuff. Now, there's going to be the skeptic or the overeducated person who comes along and says, hey, this all sounds great, but is it accredited? How do you respond to those people?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Is it a what? The last word?
I'm sorry. Is it accredited?
Oh, is it accredited? Okay, yeah, good question. So, yeah, right. So, basically, in a nutshell, no, and no school is really. I mean, you can have schools that are accredited. You certainly accreditation is nothing more than a state approval of something you've done at a certain level. So, and there are some states that require that, like Colorado, for instance. If I had an herbal school there, I would have to go through the rigmarole of becoming accredited, quote unquote, which is, you can. There's a lot of different ways to describe it, but I think what you're really asking here, to get away from the accreditation question and go with what people really would ask is it certified or you licensed? What's the deal? How can you actually do something with this? And the short answer is both yes and no. There is no such thing as licensing for any herbalist anywhere, and that's a good thing. That's not a bad thing. Now, that's actually a good thing. The only kind of certification you can get for as an herbalist is whatever a school gives you. So if you come to my course, then yes, you get certification in the sense that I give you a certificate that says, hey, you did the work, you've completed it, and that's only worth what my reputation as a school is worth. And believe me, reputation is very important to me. So it's worth whatever my reputation is. The second level of that might be registration. You could say you're a registered herbalist. And that means there's a guild called the American Herbalist Guild in the United States. And they're the de facto largest organization of herbalists. And so they have a process that you can go through where it's kind of a peer review process. And if you pass their peer review, then you become registered. And again, it's a nice gesture in a way, but it really, in my opinion, doesn't mean much. And the reason is you can have somebody who grew up learning herbal medicine from their grandma in Appalachia somewhere, and I guarantee you they know things. They know a lot of good medicine, and it's effective medicine they use, versus somebody who went and paid a whole bunch of money to go to some kind of a maybe more prestigious or certainly more expensive school, maybe in California or Oregon or somewhere. And I'm not saying that that's a bad thing. That's a great thing. But there's no comparison between those two places because most herbal schools, most programs, maybe you get a materia medica. That means all the plants that you use. Maybe, at best, maybe 250 or 300 herbs. Really. And I mean, really understand and know. Probably less than that in terms of really understanding and using. So compare that, and those herbs you use to herbs that you might not even find in a lot of books. I mean, I base a lot of my experience off of herbs that a lot of people don't use. And so I'm always working with new herbs and new plants because we've lost so much information. You can go back to some of the old, what we call the eclectic herbalists in the 1900s, the 1800s, and read through text and find some of that information, Native American stuff that you can read through. So my point is that there's just so many herbs, so many plants that are used in so many different ways that it's really, it's in my opinion, it's full of hubris to be able to assume that that whole certification problem or registration problem or process is really means that much. And in fact, it ends up being kind of a political process. And you find that some people that sit on the board, I'm going to make some people mad by saying what I'm going to say right now, but some of the people that sit on the board historically in the AHG, they also have herbal schools. And so you can kind of be guaranteed if you go through their school, you're going to become a registered herbalist because they're on the board that actually approves that. Now, there's a lot of people say, well, that's changed, and I think it is changing. I don't even want to become a registered herbalist because of the fact that it's going down a road, in my opinion, that there's no need to go down. So the whole concept of licensing that we have for medical doctors and for nurses and all of that is really an allopathic concept that started about 100 years ago. And the reason that we need licensing, according to them, was because we need to take to watch for the safety and health and welfare and safety of people, because we're teaching doctors and nurses this information that people need to be protected from. Well, so look at the number of people, let's say 150 years ago, that were hurt by herbalism, in any way, shape, or form, and compare that even per capita to the number now that are hurt by allopathic medicine, or the number of herbalism now compared to allopathic medicine per capita, and you will find that it's laughable. We lose people, over 750,000 people every year die to allopathic medicine that we know of. That's people that have died getting the right drug to the right person for the right dosage to the right amount, all that stuff. They've died, and that's not even counting people to the cover-ups. So probably closer to 1 million people a year in a licensed concept, in a licensed structure, right? So really, what I maintain is that the only thing licensing has and ever will be is it's a source of revenue for government. That's what it is, and it's a huge source of revenue for government, and it's the government getting their hands into the practice of what everybody has a constitutional right to do, which is to seek out, find, and practice and use their own form of medicine. And I think if you count up all the people that have ever been, let's say that have ever died from herbal medicine, you might get one. Literally, over the last 200 years, you might find one. There's some people who say questionably that there was a woman who died taking too much chaparral back in the 80s. I remember it was a huge deal about that. Well, she was taking a lot of other drugs, the pharmaceuticals, and she overdosed. She took a huge amount of chaparral. She had liver weakness. She took a herb she shouldn't have taken for a long period of time, kind of self-prescribed. So, you can find, of course you can find occasionally, you can find something, but certainly not even anywhere in the same scope as 750,000 people per year.
Right.
So licensing doesn't really do much for us. So that goes back to your original question, which was really, may or may not have been about licensing and all of that. But I think it's important that people understand the context within which licensing really exists in our country.
No, Sam, I got to say, you're a brother from another mother, because everything you just said there, I hold fast to myself. There's no question about it. In fact, in a lot of the studies that I've done, and I've done a lot of studies in law, trying to understand the difference between statutory and common law. And one of the things that I found is that there's a presumption in law that says that that we need to be taken care of, that we need to be governed because we can't take care of ourselves. And that's where the whole idea of liability comes from, and that's why all of us have been placed in a presumptive place of being limited, having limited liability to ourselves, and the government makes up for the other part of that limited liability. So what a lot of us have done is we've rebutted that presumption in law, and we've even noticed to those authorities and told them that we're 100% liable for our own doings, and we freely practice whatever we want to practice because it's our right to do so. So I'm totally with you on that. No problem there. I just asked that question because I know that there's going to be, and I'll go ahead and get myself in trouble here too, I know there's going to be some overeducated bozo that comes through and listens to this broadcast and says, I'm going for a master of whatever it is that they want to master at so-and-so university, and I want to make sure that these hours I spend, actually count, because they account it differently than we do. Sam, you and we're self-educators. I can guarantee, just knowing, having heard all the things that you said, I bet you self-educate yourself in all kinds of areas.
I have, and I certainly, I have a BA in linguistics, and I actually went to med school for a year. I did it as kind of a early midlife crisis. I went back to school and got all of my post-baccalaureate stuff that I didn't get the first time around. I worked full-time while I was doing it, and I still, I got into several med schools. And then after I did, my wife lost she had a contract, kind of a web developer contract that she, and as soon as we moved to Texas, actually she lost that. That's part of why we came down to Texas and went to med school. And after a year of that, it became clear that we had to move from where we were and go and move into an urban area, and I had to basically rob my daughter my teenage daughter from what she does best in life, which is ride horses and jump horses, and that is her life, and she's very good at it. And not be able to help my son's college. So basically, it's a financial decision between either med school or family. So I mean, I had that, a year of med school, and they kept the door open for me for a couple of years, but I had to give that up. I have I don't know what the equivalent of class hours are in all the schools I've taken in the military. Just Special Forces Medic alone is just, like I said, it's very much a PA school curriculum, but it's given over a period of about a year. It's 24/7. And plus, you would get a lot of things you wouldn't get in PA school. Even meatball surgery. You have to know how to set up an OR and how to do basic debridement and basic amputations in the field if you're the only one to do it. All of that. Language school. I studied 3 different languages. And I'm native fluent in German. Because I lived over there and worked as a translator my first time in the military. Interrogator school. So all of those things, you add those up. I probably got well over the equivalent of class hour of a couple of doctorates, really. I mean, honestly, it probably is. And when I teach my classes in my school, I say 100 class hours, and you get talk to any student who's been in my classes, and they'll tell you that is 100 hours of drinking out of a fire hose. That's not a typical class hour in a typical university. That's not a 45-minute class hour and take some notes and listen to a lecture. That is absolutely down your throat information that you're just you got to absorb one way or another, because that's what you're responsible for. And so it's there's a lot of different ideas as to what accreditation really should be, in my opinion.
Right. No problem here. 10-4. I appreciate that. Actually, that's wonderful. Now, with these last 8 minutes left in this particular broadcast, you had mentioned something about Indian reservations earlier in our discussion. Have you done any work in Indian reservations?
I have not. That's one area of my life I would really like to change to. I would love to put some time into there, especially with what we teach and what I feel like we've taken from the Indian nations, in our country. And I'm not here to talk about any of that or to feel any first world white man guilt or anything like that. It's not. That's done and over. But the point is, that is a culture that has entirely had the guts ripped out of it, is entirely destroyed. And it was at one time very close to the earth. You can point out good things and bad things about any culture, but one thing that you could say is most of the Indian nations were very close to the earth, and they've lost all of that. And I would love to be able to go back and teach that kind of self-sustainability, teach back that plant knowledge, give all of that back, and hopefully help their culture, kind of heal and recover somehow.
Okay, well, that's wonderful to hear you say it, because I am developing many communications with some of those reservations that are very much in, oh my goodness, the status and the filth, the absolute depravity that there is on those Indian reservations. We can't even go into in an hour conversation, but it's yeah. So Sam, then as I continue to make contacts within that community, I'll there may be opportunities that come from that, Sam, and I'll certainly at least notify you of them, let you know.
That would be wonderful. I'd appreciate it, and that's someplace I'd love to bring my herbal medics to, for sure.
Because I'm here in South Dakota, and of course, here in South Dakota we have Pine Ridge, and that's a pretty big reservation, and they have great need for those kind of things. Like you said, we won't go into all the all the details of that, but that's another line that I'd like to get into as well. I try to make this a platform for people that have these kind of concepts to talk about. You brought forth some really, really good stuff. In any permaculture, vermiculture, or survival / preparedness techniques, all that stuff I think is going to come very into great need here in the very short-term future, I hate to say, but as I keep my eyes open and my ears to the ground, I'm starting to hear some rumbling. So I appreciate guys like you who are out there, trying to help people to understand what how to make it through those difficult times. Do you have something that you'd like to leave us with these last 4.5 minutes? Is there something that's kind of pressing on you right now?
Oh, maybe not necessarily, but I would like to say just we talked a little bit about the herbology program, and I would like to say for anybody who's interested in this, just shameless self-promotion at least, I've got on our website, you can also find we sell herbal first aid kits. So if you're not interested in necessarily learning the information right now or can't for one reason or another, I sell an herbal first aid kit that is, it's got a trauma side to it, it's got a Western, kind of allopathic side to it, and it's also got the herbal side to it. It's got a number of different tinctures, about a dozen or 13 different tinctures. It's got salves, syrups, things like that, that I think that through my experience over the years, and especially going into remoter areas, especially being out in the field a lot, that I think in a post-disaster environment are going to be very important. So it's not just, there's a few what we call simples, which are single herbs by themselves. One of them is algarita, another one is chaparral. I think another one is andrographis, and then I've got most of the rest is formulas. So, for instance, a lymph-moving formula is sort of a way to kind of prevent illness when you feel like you've really been exposed to something. Deep antibacterial type of formula. I've got something for the gut, for general digestive stuff. I've got something for inflammation and pain and nervines and things that are respiratory. So all the different areas, UTIs, areas that you can use these herbs, and I get a lot of really good feedback on these. So if anybody's interested in just at least stockpiling good herbs, and if that's your doorway into learning about plant medicine, then so be it. And that works. I've got have a handout that goes with it, a little, about a 4-page printout that tells you all of the different formulas, how they're used in general, why you would use them, and maybe that's of use to some of your listeners as well. So you can always get that also off at thehumanpath.com, and we've got a link, I think, on the front page. If we don't, we will have it up today. We've kind of switched some stuff around on our front page, but you can get to it through our humanpath.com.
Excellent. That's great. So I would recommend to all my listeners to go get one of those, at least one of those, and sign up for the herbology class, and because I'm sure they go hand in hand.
Yes, absolutely do.
And now, we do have a couple minutes left here. I want to ask you something. I heard, many years ago, my wife is very much into herbs, and that's one of the things that she's intending to go into. So I may be paying you a visit myself very soon. But some years ago, somebody overdosed, I think, on pennyroyal or something, trying to abort a baby. I think it was pennyroyal. I can't remember what the exact herb was, but they make a big to-do about that, and it turned out that there was it was some pharmaceutical the lady had taken that actually killed her. So I'm very familiar with these over-the-top schemes to try to blame herbs on.
Right. And then basically it's trying to disempower people, really. I say don't trust the plant medicine. That's dangerous. But on the other hand, plant medicine doesn't work at all. Which is it? Does it either work too good or does it not work at all? Take a pick. But instead, buy counter medicine,
Right. So the thehumanpath.com, is that correct?
Yeah, thehumanpath.com. There's a V in front. So thehumanpath.com is how you get to our site, and you can find pretty much anything I've talked about on there too. And I've got a podcast site. I've got a video. You'll find links to the YouTube and the Facebook and the podcast and all that too there.
Yep. That's right.
A lot of free information if you're interested.
Yep. Very, very good stuff. I appreciate that. So for Sam.
On too. I appreciate getting a chance to talk to you. I'd love to come on.
Yeah. Thank you, sir. Thank you. So for Sam Coffman, this is Rick Hidalgo. This has been another episode of the House Hidalgo Show. Thank you for coming. God bless all and stay safe. Thanks, Sam.
Go on. Bye.